light and dark is so very thin.
I am God! And I have become legend.
All right, and welcome back, Guardians, to another episode of Becoming Legend.
What is up, Guardians? How's everybody doing?
What's up, Guardians? I hope y'all are doing fantastic. Thank you for coming back to episode 11. Mm-hmm. We took a very short break to kind of compose ourselves and go through our Destiny experience, figure out what we wanted to talk about on the show, how we wanted to move forward with these next 10 episodes, and what direction we want to go with telling the story of Destiny. So far, in the previous 10 episodes, we've given you some really in-depth character introductions to the heroes and the villains of Destiny. But we've really just been painting the immediate portrait of what's going on in the world around you that you participate in the game. There is another world that we're going to speak about. There are two super beings, gods, creators. It's not really clear exactly what they are, but there are these superpowers that just their thoughts affect what happens in our universe. So we would like to speak with them and about them and explain them to you today. Mr. Tweeziix, which one would you like to hone in first? Who would you like to speak about? The Gardner or the Winnower characters we'll be speaking about this episode?
I think the Winnower is probably the easiest one to talk about because we have the most perspective on the Winnower as they exist in the game. For those of you who are new to this episode, some backstory. We talked, of course, about the Books of Sorrow. We talked about Oryx. But one of the most important things that happens before Fundament, happens before the Books of Sorrow even take place, before the Hive are even Krill.
That's right.
It's a long time ago.
That's right, going way back.
Yeah,
like beginnings of the universe.
Yes, the story goes back to the beginnings of the universe. For us, the Guardians, the story as we know it goes back to Season of Dawn, where we were given the book Unveiling. Right. For those of you that didn't play, as a reminder of how you unlocked it, after completing the story campaign for Shadowkeep, you unlocked a mysterious ornament, or a mysterious artifact, I think is what it's called, where you go into the pyramid ship. You speak to a veiled being. You pick up an object at the very end, and it triggers a cutscene. That object you give to Eris Morn, and Eris Morn starts delivering us messages from the darkness. And these messages become the Books of Sorrow, or not the Books of Sorrow. Wow, that was mess. These things become the Book of Unveiling.
That's right.
But
just one quick moment, Tweeziix. I just want to explain the importance of the artifact that you just mentioned to the viewers and listeners who may not fully understand the importance of some items, some artifacts, some finds in this game. This is an item, almost an exact replica of the anomaly that we find in the Crucible, as well as the second anomaly or device that Clovis Bray was working on Europa. So you already hear stories about how powerful these artifacts are, and being just near them will cause you to have hallucinations. So these are very powerful pieces of darkness and light energy that we'll continue to explain. Thank you so much, Mr. Tweeziix.
No problem, man. And so basically what the Books of Unveiling is basically a history of the universe as told from the perspective of the darkness. Right. So as a caveat, a lot of what we know right now about the Winnower is from mostly from Unveiling. There's a couple of lore entries tied to specific weapons or specific armors that are, time gated, if not, things that it's hard to find. There are some armors that are in Destiny 1. So obviously, a lot of you guys aren't going to be able to get those armors right now. But what we know about the Winnower is both the Winnower and the Gardner exist as paracausal beings playing a game that they liken to the game of flowers.
That's right.
And this game of flowers that they play, in essence, is the game of creation and death. Where the gardener is responsible for planting new flowers and choosing where the flowers are planted, helping them grow. And the winnower's job is to cut the flowers and to kill them. And what ends up happening in the Book of Unveiling is that we find out, most importantly, I think, the winnower views itself as the reason behind our creation as beings, not just as guardians, but as beings. There is a fight that breaks out. I'm glossing over a lot, so if we want to go back and deep dive, we can. But there's a fight that breaks out between the winnower and the gardener that causes them to accidentally push forward the seeds of creation. The worms were created, which we believe the worms that eked out from the soil of the flower game that went on to live are the krill, who became the hive. They mention these small little nano creatures that existed before them or at the same time as them, but was always doing its own thing, that we as people that look at the lore interpret that as being the existence of Vex. Vex, for those of you who aren't aware, Vex are not the giant machines that they take form in, but they're actually the Radiolarian fluid that is fueling that machine. Indeed. And it's not just one of them. There are millions and millions of nano creatures that are just fueling it. So it's a fun thing to know every time you kill a Vex now.
Indeed.
But
they talk about as Vex milk multiple times. Whenever you see that Vex milk, that white fluid that you see on Nessus, transforming the planet as well as the fluid inside every single Vex mech that you see, that is the actual creature. That is the mind that is piloting the exosuit. You're not actually fighting that armor, Mr. XTweeziix was saying. And there are crazy effects, and they're having scientific studies done by Mr. Globus Spray, who have taught us a lot about the Vex milk itself. But exactly as Mr. XTweeziix was just saying, it really implies in this lore book that the Vex may have been the guideline principle to the game that was being played between the winnower and the gardener, a way of ensuring one doesn't cheat too much and try to keep the rules of the game. So, for example, us as guardians having these powers, being able to blow things up with our mind, our powers are what are known as paracausal. That means just by thinking about it, we're able to apply an otherworldly power to make things real that were not possible before. That's basically the extent of our power. We use it in different ways: void, arc, solar, now stasis with the darkness, etc. So us being able to have and wield these powers, we are bending and breaking the rules of reality, which the Vex do not like. So anytime we do that near them, we are a threat to their programming, in essence.
And that is why they run so many simulations that they do, the infinite simulations, is so that they can figure out how best to not just defeat us, but in their eyes, return order to the world. That's right. Because we are beings that exist without order. So it's very interesting the way that the darkness, who we interpret the darkness as being the winnower, and the gardener as being the traveler, the light. We don't know if the traveler is the only existence of the light or what. That's a thing. But it's just very interesting because he talks about the the darkness views itself very much as a creative force. If it wasn't for the fight, then we wouldn't have been created. And we should be thanking the darkness, because the darkness, the way that the darkness sees itself is that it gives everybody something kind of to live for. You know, very much like the very fundamental forms of the sword logic are the darkness's mentality of things. You know, like very much, if it exists, there must be a purpose, or you must find it, or you kill it, or like, you know, those who have no purpose should not exist is basically
exactly
the way that the darkness sees everything.
You're struck down, if you die, it means you deserve to die. You didn't have the right to exist in the first place.
Yeah, which is why the Guardians are so appealing to the darkness, is because exactly that. Like, we are responsible. Like, we are the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I don't think we can understate that. And so we should be thanking the darkness, because we follow the sword logic without meaning to. Like, we crush smaller beings for fun because we're grinding out a gun, you know?
Absolutely.
And so it's thanks to the darkness that we have that ability. It's thanks to the darkness that we have something to live for. So as a result, you know, the way that I read it, especially because the way that lore book ends, Unveiling ends with, I think it's called Truth and Hope. And it's a lore entry from Eris. It's like a letter to the Guardians from Eris, which is kind of confusing, because it sounded like she was like, don't use the darkness. And, you know, like a year later, she used the darkness. But, you know, we don't know how much of this we can take for granted, because it is only one side of the story. It's only the darkness's perspective on the story. So we don't know if everything that they say about how everything broke down is true, because one of the big things that they say is that in playing the flower game always resulted in the same pattern. You know, it's very specific rules. If a flower has 2 or fewer neighbors, it dies. If it has 3 neighbors, it lives. If it has more than 3 neighbors, it is starved, so it dies. If a dead flower has 3 living neighbors, then it shall be reborn. You know, like, there are these weird rules to the game, and all that would happen was that the Gardner and the Winnower would set up the game and then just let it play out. But they said that it would inevitably end in this pattern. Mm-hmm. Like this one pattern that constantly repeated itself. And as the Winnower, as the darkness says it, the Gardner got frustrated and insisted upon creating a new rule to the game that rewarded players for, I think the word specifically is homogeneity. I might have to check that. But, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, the light, the Gardner getting upset at, you know, constantly losing the game, or it always ending in this one pattern, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. So
that's right.
It's a very good lore book. If you haven't gotten it, go back and grind out Shadowkeep. It's worth the read.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we were actually just having this discussion right before we started recording, that it is one that is worth revisiting, especially with the information that you have currently, because upon your first read through, to me, it was definitely a major change of pace from the other lore tabs and books that were given previously. So at first, you're reading about this game that they're playing, the flower game. You're learning the rules. And as you're reading the lore book, the rules are very intricate and detailed. It's much more specific than the general version we're giving you right now. But upon a second entry, you start to make the connections between the garden game and the actual universe that we're living in. You're starting to realize that these roses and flowers that are popping up are galaxies and systems in our actual universe, where life is sprouting, where creatures have wills and go to war and all these other things that just happen with life in galaxies. So when the Gardner got tired of the pattern repeating itself over and over and changed the rules, what the Gardner what it appears it did is the Gardner introduced the Traveler and the Light into the universe, and that created a way that I believe the quote is, no matter what, always, someplace, somewhere, there will be something evolving that the darkness will not be able to just quell. What that means, they introduced the Tower into our, I'm sorry, not the Tower, the Traveler.
Yeah, the Traveler.
They introduced the Traveler into our universe. The Traveler has been traveling from planet to planet, empowering races, trying to create a force strong enough to combat the darkness, which from the Winnower's perspective, is cheating. That's why the Winnower is so upset about all of this. Because in the eyes of the Winnower, the Winnower is actually the hero in the story because it's the Gardner who cheated in the original game. So it really brings into questions, well, who do you support here? So far, these past 7 years, we've been taught nothing but trust the Traveler, trust the Light. But now you're starting to get evidence of the contrary, that maybe it could be beneficial to somewhat trust in the darkness, as we've seen by being able to harness the ability of stasis. Does that mean we completely believe everything the Winnower is telling us? No, but can we use its power to help us survive? Yes, especially if we can dual wield the light and the darkness. If we can harness the Gardner and the Winnower's true powers, and hopefully one day fight them back to the point where their little whims don't affect the entire galaxy, and maybe we can, control our own destiny. But, as far as when you might see this in the Destiny in-game timeline, probably not for a few years, honestly, because
I think it'll be Lightfall.
Lightfall, I could see it.
Yeah.
At least when we're introduced to those characters. But I could see a 2 or 3 year arc of us actually, learning to deal with them and see what's going to happen. What are the repercussions?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I had a really weird interpretation of that part of the book anyways. Talking about the inevitable pattern that emerged. Listen, I might have overreached in my interpretation, but I'm going to give it anyways. The overinterpretation that I've had is that without another force acting on a civilization that kind of unites them towards something different, inevitably what ends up happening is that civil war breaks out and it's mutual destruction. Like, it's just the way that the pattern, that this is my interpretation. Again, I don't think this is right, but this is how I read it, was that what the darkness is very much about, what they're for, is selfishness. Like, I do this so that I can survive, and survival of the fittest is all that matters. And if I survive and you don't, it's because I'm better than you. Versus the Traveler, which, especially because I play as a warlock, and I admit that now, the powers seem to be not to better one individual over the other, but to bring them together with a uniting force. And as a warlock who puts down rifts to heal my teammates, I feel like that's like the big distinction is that without intervention, selfishness would win, and we would just destroy ourselves. Well, if it wasn't for the Traveler, would we have even had the experiences that we did? So that's it. That's my interpretation. It's just selfishness on the side of the darkness, selflessness on the side of the Traveler and the Light. And it's just very interesting to think about. Trying to read into what the pattern that they talk about, and inevitably showing up what that pattern could be, and how the Traveler could circumvent that, like what the Traveler does to empower races and to kind of unite them and to push them forward into new ages of technology is something that's just fun to think about whenever we're in these downtimes. It's Guardian games, guys. Like, there's nothing happening.
Oh yeah.
So this is my favorite time in the game, actually, because compared to at the beginning of the season, where we're just rushing through week to week and we're just trying to find out the newest, latest lore and make sure we're completing all of our challenges. Like, towards the end of the season, I don't feel like I have to play as much. And when I do play, I get to entertain these really weird thoughts about what these books mean, or like what the importance of XYZ is, because, you know, like, I have the time to think about it. But I have taken us on a tangent for far too long. You know, Bird, I talked about the Winnower, so I think it's only fair that you talk about the Gardner.
Okay. So in game, the first time you're really introduced to the potential character of the Gardner, which really you just see statues, not unlike the statues of the darkness, of which we are now starting to uncover and see more often in the story. In the Dreaming City, which is the hometown of the Awoken, the home city, the home. It's kind of like a royal city in another time loop dimension. If you put a royal city right next to a black hole and it was caught in this indefinite time loop forever, that would be it. So you go there, and there are multiple statues of the Gardner, which through several very long lore books that you read about the Dreaming City, you understand that the Awoken kind of worshipped her and had a better understanding of her. And the Gardner is essentially a woman, the woman in charge of light and life in the universe. Now, with the Winnower and the Gardner, you don't learn their origin stories. You don't learn where they came from. Honestly, we don't even have true names for them. These are just the titles that they've kind of given themselves and passed on to us.
Just so that we could, I think they gave themselves those titles, and the way that they did everything is so that we mere mortals could have an understanding, at least at a very base level, of how they operate, because they are ageless and timeless.
Correct. Now, to me, I've always viewed the Gardner as the fact that it seems she had a major role in the creation of the universe and the creation of the central command centers of the universe. And what I mean by that specifically is Black Garden. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Destiny 1, first major place you visit at the end that's being controlled by the Heart of Darkness is the Black Garden. This is a place that is spread among several lore books. We've had several adventures into the Black Darkness. We've lost Guardians in there. We've discovered that there were Dark Guardians in there long before we even discovered what was going on with Shin Malphur and the Dredgens. So one part of this that I actually wanted to home in a little bit was the character we seem to talk about every single episode, Prince Aldrin, aka the Crow nowadays. He's doing very good, y'all. There's a really good lore tab that was released with the Guardian games, where he rescues a lone Guardian who's out in the field who was going to lose against some cabal, and basically he's out there doing good deeds. But anyway, before all this, whenever he was still Prince Aldrin, the brother to Queen Mara, and had a role of Awoken royalty, he actually had a adventure into the Black Garden where he was in there. It really doesn't say. I would guess at least a few weeks, long enough where this is a dangerous amount of time to be in the Black Garden, because time doesn't pass normally in there. There are whispers coming from the ground. There are Vex everywhere patrolling. And at some point, he makes it to a very, very, very deep heart of the garden type area where he encounters a tree of silver wings and picks up seeds from the ground. And we believe this is possibly the point where he may have been infected with the darkness that we see come to fruition in the Forsaken DLC. Because in that DLC, as you're playing it, they don't really explain how he got the darkness in him. This is, again, another story that's wrapped up in the lore. So the creation of this place, the Black Garden, really harnessed darkness, and the way that the Winnower ran the galaxy was the way of power in this place, which was created by the Gardner. So I know I'm going on just kind of a little bit of a tangent. I think the main point that I have is we don't have a ton of rock solid information on the Gardner. We only have the stories that we've been told by other races, ancient history that we've discovered through the Awoken, and what we've been presented from the Winnower's perspective. You know, the Traveler speaks to us, but only in visions and riddles, and it's never really exactly clear what its intentions are. So I'm really looking forward to the day when we can have an open conversation with the Gardner or the Traveler, or however they want to present an open conversation with the light, because the darkness is here. We can, you know, hit 1-800-DARKNESS and have a quick conversation anytime. But, you know, the light's just kind of taking its time to get around to explain to us the way that things actually are. And on top of that, there are other light and darkness characters, the 9, who they are an entire episode on their own. But I just want to bring them up to say that it is not only the Gardner and the Winnower who are the major powers at play in our universe. There are others as well.
Yeah. The 9 are very interesting. Obviously, it's really hard to go into them here because there's a lot.
That's right.
And for those of you that did not play Season of the Joker? Joker's Wild.
Yeah, Joker's
Wild.
Wild.
It was Joker's Wild because they didn't say Season of until Shadowkeep. Up until that point. No, they said Season of Opulence, didn't they? Well, take it back. I'm over, guys. It's it for me. No, in the Tree of Silver Wings is also very interesting because we have lore entries in Destiny 1 on specific pieces of armor that talk about the Tree of Silver Feathers, and it is not in a polite way. Like it is, it sounds like a tree that you don't want to run into.
That's right.
And then last year during Shadowkeep, what was it? When did we get to see the actual? There was a tree of feathers that was forming. It might have been Season of the Worthy.
Whenever it was like
season of the Worthy now. Yeah.
No, yeah, we're in season 10.
We'll go with season 10.
Of the Worthy, and that was whenever at the very beginning they threw you into that mission, and first see the Tree of Silver Wings, and after that you're sucked into a darkness zone.
Look, there's been a lot of seasons.
For me,
wow!
Remember. Like as a lore reader, seeing that in person was like, wow, that is amazing.
Yeah,
this is a tree of death, but it looks so beautiful.
Oh, that was the thing. I couldn't understand the tree as it existed because I knew, based off of what we knew at the time, the tree was not really something to mess with. The tree was evil, but it didn't seem to really have, like, you know, especially because it spawned Taken all around it, and the darkness. And an aside, when the darkness is talking about the Vex and how they exist, they make a small comparison to Oryx and his Taken, and how the darkness is not able to control the Vex in the same way that's able to control the Taken. Which, again, in that one specific area for that mission was very big because that's all you run into is just Taken enemies. But that, it wasn't a hard mission. We ran it all the time. You had to run it all the time. So
solo it.
Oh God, you had to do it like every week.
Every single week.
I hated that part. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, why?
There were
at least
occasional changes on the inside once you were actually sucked into the darkness zones, and the particular dialogue that you got from Nokris was interesting. But as from a gameplay perspective, you did do the same thing every single week until the boss, the very last week, which was like 9 weeks in or something.
Yeah, so that was a fun season.
Yeah.
So it's a thing that we talk about, and I think that's what makes the lore so exciting for us to talk about. Really, is that we keep, like, the way that Destiny has worked in the past is that we've been given just a massive amount of information. Like, you didn't understand what a grimoire card was when Destiny first launched. You just knew that you unlocked them and they were for specific things, and they were never too long or too short. And then, sorry for the motorcycle that's deciding to rev. Come Destiny 2, they really started to go away from that and more towards this idea of the lore books. giving out everything. You had the Ghost Story, it's lore book, which is like a lot of pages. And what's great is that we have so many pieces of lore, not just in-game experiences that we have or lines that you get in a strike, but there's lore on your guns, there's lore on your armor. And as we learn more with each of these books, we are able to go back to some of those earlier pieces of lore and see them with a fresher perspective. Because we've seen a tree of silver feathers, like we've now encountered the darkness. So we can make a little bit more educated guesses about things, and we can also tie some things together. The Book of Sorrow, when we first got it, was amazing in the sense that it really gave us a history of the hive as a whole, but it didn't tell us a whole lot about the krill. Whereas with this Book of Unveiling that we got, we find out, like, the way that the Winnower refers to things, as a result of the fighting between the traveler, between the light and the dark, between the traveler and the darkness, whomever. Because of that fighting, the worms eked out of the soil and became what we assume to be the krill. So we have more of an understanding about how some of those forms of life come together. Mm-hmm. And it's just, again, it's my favorite time of the season. You get to sit back and reflect and kind of really think about, like, what pieces of new information we've gotten and how does that impact what we understand of the world that we exist in so far. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And see, that there was a perfect example, just right with the origin of the krill, that you see, again, that the whims of these gods out there who aren't even properly thinking about the consequences of their actions, because they had a fight, an entire new subspecies was born. Because that species was born, everything that happened in the Books of Sorrow, thousands of years of death and decay, wiping out entire species, planets, all of this stuff, because two gods over there decided to have a little bicker. So one thing that I think might be a bit of a good transition here is how one day we may be able to use the powers of light and darkness against these gods. I think we already had an example, and we haven't really had a situation since that has been quite as intricate. What I'm talking about right here is the King's Fall raid in the final battle against Oryx. Throughout this episode, we've spoken a little bit about the sword logic. Essentially, if you die, you deserve to die, and everything you do needs to be for yourself. Long story short, for the viewers and listeners who don't know, Oryx basically built a system of power to where all of his minions, whenever they kill something, he gets the power. That's how he was the most powerful hive. He was able to take everyone else. That's how that worked. How we were able to actually destroy him was we used the opposite. So the darkness uses the sword logic. The light uses something what's called the bond logic. The bond logic is very similar to what Mr. xTweeziix was saying at the beginning of this episode, how if in this game, if three flowers are near each other, they can form to create a stronger flower. Essentially, if you have more beings of light and power that bond together, they can create something more powerful than any one of themselves individually. So in the Taken King raid, in the final battle against Oryx, you see him open his chest and he creates these bombs of darkness around the platform, and you essentially overwhelm those bonds of darkness with the bond logic, with the light. We put so much light inside the darkness that it literally explodes because it cannot happen. And when that happens, you shoot Oryx, and that's how we took care of it. So we haven't really had a raid where we've had to really take these really intricate powers. Like, imagine how much control you have to insert your light into the darkness, make sure it's not corrupted, control it, explode it, and then take on a whole nother being with powers that you've never come across. So now that we've done that before, perhaps we can learn from this experience and harness it in a similar way. I'm sure we will against Savathun. But after that, hopefully we'll be able to find a way that we can properly meld the light and darkness into something more powerful and use that weapon against these creators who are causing so much trouble, because the weapons we have right now can't even touch them. Honestly, I think if the Gardner came at us right now, or the Winnower, either or, for whatever reason, and all we had was light, that's not enough. Not even close. They would wipe us. So, it's just really interesting to see how we'll be able to take their own laws of nature and use it against them for our survival.
Mm-hmm. I'm very interested to see how this works out. Speaking of the bond with the what I was thinking about as you were also talking about that, I was like, there's also it's not a official bonding mechanic, but if I remember correctly from the Black Garden raid that was released at the beginning of Shadowkeep, there is an entire mechanic around channeling energy into specific places. Like, you have to have a team of guardians line up in a very specific way in order to chain. I think it was electricity. It could not have been, but chain that together. And I was like, well, this is another example of like a bonding moment where exactly. Guardians are having to work together for a single cause. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm very curious how this is going to end. Obviously, we've gotten hints about guardians and beings that are able to wield both the light and the darkness, and how powerful they are, or were, especially if we're talking about the Drifter and Dredgen Yor and all the other Dredgens. So I'm just interested. It's obviously, this is going to be a story that plays out over at least the next 2 years, if not the next 5 years. All we know right now is that eventually Lightfall, as this section of the campaign, will end in a couple of years, and then we're going to move on. But the Destiny universe is still going to exist. So we're going to tell a different story. Is it going to be light and darkness? We honestly, we don't know how long we're going to be playing out this story, or how long it's going to take for us to face off against the darkness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's not forget, the darkness came and not even tempted us. Like when we first met the darkness face to face at the end of the Shadowkeep campaign, I think the last thing that the darkness says to us is, "I am your salvation." And obviously, as we spoke about a lot today, the darkness is kind of arrogant, kind of self-cocky about itself. But how funny if that were true, by introducing us to the darkness and us like taking on some of the darkness's powers, that we can become strong enough to hold our own against both the Winnower and the Gardner. That'd be a fun irony, like 5 years from now.
Oh yeah. But in the meantime, between now and then, for sure, I would even say within the next year or two, we are going to have more conversations with the Winnower. Hopefully they introduce the Gardner. At this point in the story, if y'all want to know exactly where we are, the Winnower is out there somewhere in our solar system right now, in one of those little darkness pockets. And last we heard, Callus was successful in his attempts to commune with the darkness. This was what we spoke about earlier in the episodes, where we talked about the Glycon ship that was introduced in this season, of the Season of the Chosen. The entire purpose of that, well, there were two purposes. There was one to show you that if you chose to be Callus's shadow a couple seasons ago, you made the wrong choice. And the other one is to show that Callus was successful in communing with the darkness. He may have even been granted new powers.
We don't know.
He might even be dead. It's possible. They're introducing so many options. We really don't know what's going on. All we know is the Winnower is out there. The Winnower is communing with the creatures who are able to do its will here in our solar system. And at the rate we're going, I think we will see more direct influences of the darkness, within the next season, for sure.
I think so, especially because, as we wield the darkness, I'm also curious, when does the darkness get a race of beings that are not taken? When does darkness become a weapon type, a weapon archetype, and not just a thing that we can equip?
Right.
Yeah. I can't wait, dude. I honestly like. We're also getting to that point in the season where you get to look forward to the next season and what that means, and as we revisit the Vault of Glass, I wonder how our interpretation will be affected now that we know what we know about the darkness, what we know about the Vex, and I'm curious as to what new information we glean as we go and venture down there.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too. They wouldn't have us go down there for nothing. And as we've seen before, it's not too difficult to change small instances in time through Vex time travel. We have experience doing it ourselves. So
look at Saint.
Exactly. So maybe we'll be able to change an instance in our past that might give us an advantage to the present, or maybe we'll try to do something, but it'll cause, more repercussions than we can handle. One pattern we've seen repeated several times is we're not exactly good at stepping into positions of power when we should. We just kind of just kill people and say, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And it's usually not. So
yeah, there's still repercussions to be felt for us killing a worm god. We still don't know what that will be. Half cocked and head sure. That's what we are.
But I need that new loot, though.
I mean, excuse me.
What am I supposed to use? The same gun that I always use? I mean, nah, man. I need a new one.
I need your head to make the 1,000 voices. Like, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna shoot a laser beam out of your mouth. I hope that's cool.
Yeah. Oh well, man.
But yeah, so as we mentioned before, we are coming towards the end of the season. Have been some interesting things coming out in the TWAB, some quick changes they're making to the game. One that doesn't necessarily affect your gameplay, but it is one major change that is being discussed among the community, is the new transmog system. I don't want to go super deep into that because that could be an episode on itself. Essentially what they're doing is you now will be able to take any armor, like say there's an armor set from 3 years ago that you would like to still wear in the Crucible because it's not good anywhere else. You can take that armor set and the way it looks and apply it to the armor that you wear now. So you still have your maximum power armor with all the specs and perks and mods that you built for it, but it looks like the one that you prefer. That sounds great. Other games have been doing it for years. It's not a problem. What some people are having difficulty with is the system that it takes you to actually change your armor. It's a really long list of steps involved. And I personally can only hope that these items are just kind of gifted to you automatically as you're just going through killing enemies anyway. But if there are specific bounties that you have to grind over and over and over in order to get the multiple items that you have to fuse into another item to another item to another item, I don't really know if I'm going to chase an entire armor set, honestly. This game requires enough time already.
Oh yeah, that's true. They did say, I think that they're slowly rolling it out. So especially at the very beginning, it is going to be for those Destiny 2 year one armors. They did say that we will be able to earn this material just by killing enemies, just by engaging in activities. But they didn't really clarify the drop rate, and I think that's what's going to be important. The transmog system, I think overall the transmog system isn't terrible. It's going to come down to the drop rate, which, I saw the community get upset. And I understand one aspect of that, which is that they are capping the amount of the number of pieces of armor that you can unlock in a single season. I think it's like 20 pieces of armor you can turn into essentially what is a universal ornament, the same things that you unlock now. So you can just change the way that your armor looks without changing the stats. And on the surface, transmog is also very big because now players like me, completionist players who feel like they need to have everything in the game if they can get it, those players are now able to save so much vault space by getting rid of old armors that are like sub 60 stat rolls. Just in the only reason why you're keeping them is just because you have them. So I think that's a very interesting part of the game that we're going to see play out. The community's reaction about it being capped is understandable, because we've already spent so much time playing this game. We've already earned those armors. I'm just trying to make it so that they're relevant today. Why are you stopping me? And I think if they remove that cap, I think the transmog system would be pretty good. The other question again is the drop rates of the materials, and how that works. If like Destiny's already a bounty grind, and so if it feels like more of a bounty grind, then I can see a lot of people like not investing a lot of time in it. But at the same time, like if it's, I can also see people who just want to grind it out. I think the biggest thing is removing the caps. That's my take on it. I don't like this new shader system, but that's just because the shaders work, like in a very similar way. And, while I dislike the way that shaders are currently applied, I do think that the shader system that was introduced in Destiny 2 is much better. The fact that I have shaders that I can put on my ship, on my Sparrow, on all of my guns, on all of my pieces of armor, and they can all be different is great. It allows me to express my individuality as a player, and that's what makes the fashion shows every week so exciting. It's just seeing who comes up with what combinations of what. If you make this super complicated with shaders, like it's not going to be as fun anymore. People are just going to go back to doing what they did before in Destiny 1, where you have one set of shaders and you just apply that, and that's your universal, like, this is my shader that I use. So it's obviously, though, it is a new system that they're putting into a live game. So hopefully, my biggest hope, honestly, is just like they continue to do what they did with Stasis. While Stasis nerfs were slow to roll out, they were faster than they had been.
True.
And so if Bungie continues to take this standpoint of, we are going to actively be watching and making changes to the game, but we're going to be moving a little bit slower to make sure we have the full picture. Hopefully by the middle of the season, next season, like, our transmog system will be in the place where everybody is happy. Yeah, there's a lot of people upset about that. If you go on Reddit, it's a whole lot of upset people. But when is Reddit ever not upset?
It's true.
So
that's very true. I think you're onto something there, that if they continue to monitor the system, especially new ones that they're introducing, then like you said, around mid-season things should be okay. And even if not, my semi-prediction will be the first 2 weeks to 2 to 4 weeks, let's say, is when the heavy complaints are going to be coming in and when everybody's going to be hating on it. But I think just like other systems, when they're first introduced, sure, they're difficult to adjust to. But as time goes on and we start to get these drops and requirements, without even really trying, by just playing the game, then after a while, you're going to have more than you know what to do with. When we started using enhancement cores to level up our guns, that was kind of weird, and I was running out. Like every single time I got a new gun, I was out of enhancement cores. But over time, as the seasons go and you're playing over time, now it's not uncommon to have 300 plus, to have 9,000 plus legendary shards and all these these materials that are difficult to come by. Sure, when you need like 10 or 30, but over time they stack up and it's not that really that big of a deal. So, as we're able to unlock more armors over time, and if someone really wanted to, they could transmog all of their armor over the course of, say a year maybe. It'll be all right.
Yeah,
the game's going to continue to change. Fresh lore is always going to come down. The gameplay will always keep you immersed. So don't worry about the small changes. It'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so. That's my thoughts anyways. That's that. Nothing else. Guardian Games wrapping up. We'll see who the eventual winner is. Can't wait for it to be done.
Oh yeah.
So
I think this is a perfect place to go ahead and begin wrapping up this episode 11. I want to say thank you again to all the viewers and listeners who have been coming by, especially if you bared with us for this past 2-week break. I really appreciate that. Understanding and coming back for some more. What you can expect in the next couple episodes, we're going to continue to discuss lore. We're going to discuss the new season, which will be coming to Destiny. Some new things coming from us. You will start to see more updates, more regular updates on the state of the game, on particular opinions. We will be doing group discussions on the Discord. If you would like to come and actually commune, speak with us, give us your thoughts on the lore. The link to the Discord will be in the YouTube. You can also catch both of us streaming on Twitch. I will go ahead and let Mr. XTweeziix give us his information first. Where do people find you, sir?
You guys can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/XTweeziix. That's XTWEEZIIX. They were cool, and they're part of the brand now. That's right. Cool. The branding, the new branding is officially done. So you guys, starting on the next stream, you guys should be able to actually see some of the stuff that I've been working on. Why I've taken such a small break is to kind of finish all that stuff. But yeah, I stream late nights on Saturday. Like I'm on Pacific Coast, so it's typically like midnight East Coast is typically when I'm live. But typically playing Destiny, like just hanging out at the tower, knocking out bounties that I need to do. By all means, come in. We'll talk about lore. Or can attest to it, man. Like I will sit in the tower, and we can just sit in the tower and we'll just talk. And we'll talk about like the state of the game and where it's at right now. Past that, you can find me on Twitter, Taylor Zeller. All of our links also will be in the show notes of the episode, depending on what podcast service you're listening on. So by all means, like you guys will be able to find us, no problem. But yeah, that's about where you can find me at. Bird, what about you?
Indeed. I can be found at twitch.tv/Birduup, BIRDUUP. I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I do change times, honestly. Sometimes you'll find me in the morning around 11. Sometimes you'll find me late night at 9. Turn on those notifications. It's really the best way to find out. Also, you can join our Becoming Legend Discord, where there are notifications when either of us go live. There's multiple ways. You know, if you want to find us, you can find us. We're really not that hard to catch, I promise.
I swear.
I'm always down for Destiny conversation, even if it has nothing to do with Destiny at all. You can say, "Hey, Bird, the weather's lovely today. That's great. But what is the tower? What if the traveler leaves and the darkness?" Yeah. So,
yeah.
Sorry, getting away with a little bit of a tangent there.
It's all good,
love
man.
you all. Thanks for coming by. When we have more updates, we'll let you know. Hope to see y'all soon. Give us your comments about the episode, by the way. Let us know. What did you think about the show? What did you think about our topics? Are there things you would like us to discuss? Are there questions you have about Destiny that maybe nobody's talking about? Is there something you love about Destiny that no one's talking about? Let us know, please. Please.
Leave a review and whatever podcast service that you listen to, man. Like we try to read them all. So thank you. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with us, especially since we've been gone. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
See y'all next time. Episode 12 coming soon.
There you go.